Good morning, everyone. Have you ever considered traveling outside of the United States, not just for vacation, but because you really wanted to visit some particular place that was important to you? I have to admit, Denise, that I think about it, but I haven't done it. Our guest today on Nurturing Big Ideas today is Denise Wakeman, who is a very, very good friend, and we have done things together in the past. We've met years ago at a blog her conference, and we've both been bloggers. And today, on Nurturing Big Ideas today with me, Yvonne DiVita, I want to talk with Denise about the whole idea of travel, about women who might want to travel alone, and why and how did this happen, Denise? Because when I used to think of you, I used to think of you as a blogger.
Well, I'm still a blogger. I don't blog as much as I used to, but that's still part of my business. So traveling. I've been traveling since I was a small child because my parents were travelers. So they were taking us on trips. I'm the oldest of three girls, but they were taking us on trips, whether it was driving cross country or going camping or just going up and down the state of California. Grew up in Southern California. Most of my relatives are in Northern California. So it was normal to always be going somewhere, because that's just what we did. And when I was 13, so I had an 11-year-old sister and a 6-year-old sister. My father was in between jobs and intentionally took like 4 months or something like that and bought a VW camper van. This is in 1972, bought a VW camper van in Germany where they're made. And we flew to Germany and we spent 3 months camping around Europe. So,
wow.
I think that even though as I was an insolent teenager, and I probably had a growl on my face most of the time, that really set the stage for me, because when I look back on that trip and even look at pictures from that trip, which I just had the pleasure of doing just last week, there were lots of smiles. So we camped around Europe, and we did it in the fall. So we were taking time off from school as well. And I have to say, I know I learned more on that trip than I did in, missing 2 months of 8th grade.
So interesting and so unique. I never went anywhere as a child. I didn't even know people did that. But as an adult, I discovered that people did that. They went on vacation and they drove to the Rockies, or they drove to Myrtle Beach, or they went places like that.
Right.
And I even took our kids a couple times when they were little. But me personally, it was like a whole new experience. And still, you left the country and went to somewhere else. And gosh, do you remember? Were your parents perfectly at ease, or was this an adventure of, we have no idea how to speak the language, we have no idea what Germany looks like, or what we're doing in Europe or whatever?
Yeah. I don't remember any uneasiness. Both my parents were very curious people, very, they were well educated. I think they had traveled. Well, my mother, I can't remember all this stuff from before I came along, but I know her parents traveled a lot, and also my father's parents traveled a lot. So I don't think that was a strange idea. It was more like they wanted to join the Peace Corps at one point too, and bring us as tiny children wherever they were going. But they were going to be sent somewhere in Europe, and then the Cold War broke out, and they kind of put a damper on bringing families in the Peace Corps. So I think there was always an urge to explore and have adventures, because we never went on normal, like with group tours or anything. We did our own thing, and we discovered, and we were always reading about new places. And my job was to keep track of all of our expenses, because we had a budget of $25 a day for a family of 5 camping. That was
Wow.
maybe it was 40. I don't remember, but I mean, that was in 1972. Things were cheaper then.
Right, but so it sounds like you have a little bit of a background, or you have experienced the whole out of the country thing. And when I say out of the country, I mean out of North America. Not Canada doesn't really count, folks.
I lived in Canada for 5-6 years too,
Yeah,
so
well,
that was out of the country.
I've been to Canada, so you can say out of the
There
country.
you go. Yeah.
I still don't think that counts.
Yeah.
And then you grew up and you became an entrepreneur.
Yep.
When we met, you were a very successful entrepreneur. And we both were bloggers, folks. I was also running a business that involved books and publishing, but teaching people to blog. You were doing similar things.
Right.
And somewhere along the way, between then and now, you started becoming this traveler. And folks, I just wanted to tell you how in awe I am of Denise, because she travels alone or with others. I mean, there are people but it isn't like last year, I think Chloe went with her best friend from high school to somewhere where they have big tortoises. Anyway.
The Galapagos.
Yes, perhaps. But it wasn't that. So I want to talk more about that, because I feel like more women would like to do it, but they aren't sure what to do, how to do it. Can you help us learn and understand?
Yeah, and just to give some context to how, because I still do my digital marketing. That's my business. And I recently started a side gig as a travel agent because it seemed like, wow, that just makes sense, because I love to travel. So I traveled so much. I've always been traveling, but I never really talked about it. That's just what I did. I just, when I wasn't working, I would go somewhere. I would go hiking in Peru, or I'd go to India or whatever. And I would post on Facebook, but it meshed for me on a trip to Peru when I realized I had to combine the two ideas, the two things that are like my business as an entrepreneur and helping other entrepreneurs to build their visibility on the web, and then my traveling and working with a coach. I came up with my new brand, this was a few years ago, but with my current brand, which is Adventures in Visibility. Because when I started thinking about the traits that I had as an entrepreneur and that I have also as a traveler, it was about curiosity, it was about taking risk, it was about being adventurous and looking for new things, trying new things all the time, experimentation. And those are the things that I think are important and keep me going in my business and what I work on with my clients. And it's how I travel. So it made sense to make my business about adventure also. And then this year, in January, I started the travel business as well. So those are kind of separate, but they have the same themes to them, right?
Yeah. So it sounds very much like the building of a story, and you have a beginning, a middle, and an end kind of thing. But often with those of us who are entrepreneurs, the end is just the beginning of something else, and we tend to combine things, right? Like you're doing now. And tell us more about that. I'm really interested.
Well, I realized that I wanted to, I was feeling like I needed something else in my business life. I've been doing this since 1996, the online marketing. I love what I do. I love the people I work with, but like there was something missing, like I needed another challenge or something. And it's one thing to go on adventures and go trekking in the Andes or go trekking in the Himalayas, but it's another thing, what I experience every time I travel someplace like that is, huge transformations in how I think and beliefs that I have to confront and that sort of thing. And that's what I really feel is so important about traveling. So, it changes your perspective. It gives you a bigger view of the world. And, basically that everybody is a human being, and have the same kinds of fears and loves, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's kind of like the really huge picture. But then I realized that, I love helping other people do that. I love planning trips. I love planning my adventures. I travel with really close friends. I just took a group to Peru where I only knew one person, and it was her group of friends who did it. That was the first time doing that. And, I saw transformations happen on that trip. I was doubtful in the beginning, but it happened by the end. And that is so exciting to me. So that's why I decided, like, hey, I want to add this to my repertoire, is bring that love and passion I have for traveling and bring it to helping other people have those adventures. I mean, they can be small adventures, they can be big adventures. Not everybody has to trek in the Andes. There's many ways to have adventures. So I added a new business to my life.
and it's helping you. You mentioned it's helping you in the current marketing business that you do. And it sounds to me, when you say you discovered or you already knew, but it's another kind of discovery that people who live in Peru are people. They're human beings, just like the people who live in New York State. Right. And I talked about this with someone else yesterday also, in the fact that we should first see ourselves and everyone else as human beings and not other or different or whatever, or even male or female. I mean, we're human beings.
Exactly.
And so I do see that. That is coming through in the things that you talk about and what you share. So I would like to talk a little bit about, let's say Tom and I decided we wanted to go on a trip and we contacted you. What's the first thing we would talk about?
The first thing I would want to know is, where do you want to go? What kind of adventure do you want to have? If you've always wanted to go to Paris, for example, that's one kind of a trip versus going to the Galapagos, which I think you said your daughter went to. That's a different kind of trip. I would want to know, what kind of activities you like to do. I would want to know a budget. How many days do you want to travel? Do you like to travel on your own, or would you want to be in a group situation? I've done it all. I've traveled by myself. I've traveled with groups. I've traveled with big groups. I've traveled with intimate tiny groups. That's my favorite, actually. I've traveled with just one friend. There's a lot of ways to do it, and so to find the right trip for somebody, those are the kinds of things that I would want to know before I started, putting together some ideas.
That's fascinating. I know that a lot of people would come to you and say, I don't know what I want to do. So, you'll have to nurse out of them, perhaps.
Yeah.
For instance, I'm not a camper.
It's like camping, when I trek, I don't camp. I stay in guest houses. I don't want to camp.
So,
I camped when I was a kid. I don't want to camp. That's a different kind of.
I'm so happy to hear that.
So they're like, if somebody's like, well, I would like to trek to Machu Picchu, which I've done, a few times. Well, I would say, okay, are you a backpacker? Do you want the llamas to carry your packs? Do you like to camp? Do you like to stay in luxury, lodges? Do you want to stay in, with in a somebody's home in a small village? That's the way I do it. That's where I get my juice, is right there. The llamas carry. I've got a guide because I wouldn't know where to go in the Andes. I've got a guide, and we are staying with families in guest homes that have been designed to have travelers come and stay with them overnight. So, there's many ways to do this.
So I'm gonna, this never even occurred to me until you just started talking about that. What about the reverse? Do you know people over there that want to come here? And is there a way to, for someone like myself and Tom, we have plenty of room, say, sure, come and stay with us?
There are sites that put people together like that. I haven't really looked into that, but that's a really good question. That's a really good question.
Yeah,
I like that. That's
you
like
named
taking
back.
it in a different direction. And it's even, going back to the, when you open a door, you never know where it's going to lead you. So like I was thinking about starting, well, no, I worked with my friend to put together a group to go on a hike, a 9-day tour and trek in Peru, because she'd been listening to me talking to it about it for 6 years, about how much I love it there. I'd been 3 times before that. And so I helped them because I have a very close friend who's a guide there, who's brilliant. And then I started my business. And I went on that trip. And when I came back, people are going, oh, when are you taking your next trip? And I was like, well, that wasn't my actual plan to take people.
Yeah.
But that's what people saw that I was doing,
Yep.
And so it's like, well, I want to go with you. I was like, okay, well, that's another option. I was just going to make the plan for you and send you off on your way, but that's another option. So you got to be open to the ideas, I think. And I think that's really important for entrepreneurs, not to just shut down, like, oh, I'm going to do this and that's all I'm doing. I mean, maybe that works for you, but I think sometimes, just in the course of doing your work, new opportunities can arise. And so you want to look at them and evaluate them and see if they're right for a new direction.
I like to tell people, look at something that's similar but not exactly what you do. What and what are the things that are your hobbies be separate from what you do, and what is that? Where's the big picture, and what really makes? I mean, you wanted or decided to travel and share it, and I think it comes in the sharing, Denise. Because you shared so much and we saw what you were doing, and a little part of me said, I want to go too. And then that's why I got to thinking, there must be other women like myself of a certain age, and we certainly would hesitate, having not done it before, to do something on our own. And even with Tom, who was more adventurous in that way than I am, it would be more beneficial. So certainly, now seeing that someone I know and trust and who has done something like that, were we to decide, we would certainly want to call you up and work with you. We're getting towards the end of our time, but I wanted to talk about the map behind you. And
my inspiration.
I love it. It's really very beautiful. And I'm not sure where you got it. That's neither here nor there at the moment.
Yeah.
But the reason well, of course, but the reason I want to bring it up is very short conversation we can have, that I grew up with the belief, having been ingrained to me, that women cannot read maps. And here I am, I'm like, wait a minute, Denise is a traveler, so I bet she knows how to read a map. And I mean, you said you'd never heard that before.
No, I hadn't heard that before, but probably because I was raised reading maps.
Yes.
And I grew up at a time that there was no GPS and there was, no phone that, you could pull up Google and say, how do I get there? Or where do I go? You still need to kind of know how to read those maps, but, but we've kind of been dumbed down now in that, we just follow directions and instead of figuring it out. But yeah, I have piles of maps because I would buy a map before every place I would go. I traveled around the world when I was 19, some on my own and some meeting up with people I knew. And I have maps from all the countries I was at, because that would be the first thing I would get. I would go to the tourist center and get a map of Bangkok, or get a map of, Athens, or wherever I was. And that's how I would figure out how to get around.
Yeah, so
like, I don't know any other way to do it.
Yeah, that women can't read maps, and I can sort of
don't believe it. Don't believe it.
Don't believe it. You heard her. She knows. So the last thing I want to just say, and I don't know how many other women out there feel this way, but one of the reasons I hesitate to travel is that I have a deep-seated fear of being lost. And I think a map would help that, because if you at least have the map and you can read it, you can probably find your way back. And I know that in Colorado, it was ingrained in me when we lived there that the mountains are in the west. So just look for the mountains. And it would be like, well, that would be a rainy day and the mountains wouldn't show. Well, what am I going to do then? So I think a map is a tool that, even if, ladies, you're like myself or some others, and you're a little hesitant about the whole map thing, get a few maps, learn how to read them, and then, call Denise, because I think traveling is something we should all be doing more of.
It fills my heart with joy when I get to the airport. Like, I love airports, and I'm not one of these people that hates to get on a plane. I love it. It's excitement, whether I'm going to Atlanta or I'm going to, London. It's like, oh, I'm going somewhere. Yay.
Well, I think there's so many out there, and I think they do hesitate. And so that's why I wanted to bring Denise on today. We go back a long way, but this is a new thing. This is, well, it's not new to Denise in that way, but she's combining it now with the other work that she does. And I think it would do women in general who are starting entrepreneurships and becoming their own bosses to think about this, because you don't have to start by going to another country. You can start by traveling around the US, but once you become successful, you might be invited to another country, and it's a phenomenal experience from what Denise says.
It's absolutely a phenomenal experience, and I invite everyone to contemplate that. Like, what would be on your wish list of a place that you would love to see that's not in your own country? And it's not hard to get there. Things are much easier now, and I'd love to help.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Denise, thank you for being on Nurturing Big Ideas today and talking more about travel. And I'm going to be in touch down the road and see if we can do this again, because perhaps there will be questions, perhaps there will be, insight, and I will make sure when we write the blog post that people know how to get in touch with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you.